Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful and oh-so-windy neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Stitcher Radio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Scott Rothman. He is here to celebrate the return of the Underwear Dragon. Before we invite Scott into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Janet Hoffman and her wonderful book, The Clothesline Code, the story of Civil War spies Lucy Ann and Dabney Walker, a great middle grade novel with illustrations by Tricia Mason. Lucy Ann and Dabney Walker came up with an ingenious way to spy for the Union Army during the Civil War using laundry on a clothesline. Their story had been all but lost to history until now. Their bravery shows that ordinary people can make a difference using ordinary things. The Clothesline Code, the story of Civil War spies Lucy Ann and Dabney Walker by Janet Hoffman, is a wonderful book that will make a great addition to your family library. You can learn all about it by going to her website, janethoffmanauthor.com. Join us right now from Mystic in the great state of Connecticut. Our guest today is here to celebrate the return of the Underwear Dragon. Please welcome to the show, Scott Rothman. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Hey, hello everyone. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you on. I have to tell you, anytime we have an opportunity to celebrate a book with a dragon and especially an underwear dragon, I'm all in.
Love it. I love it. I'm sure this happens very frequently.
Well, not so much the underwear part, but definitely the dragon part. And we recently interviewed an author who had a bear who was involved with underwear in some sort.
That's right.
But yeah. It's just a fun, one of those fun things. It's one of those fun words that if you want a 5 or a 6-year-old to giggle, you just throw underwear in and it gets them going.
It's a pretty great and extensive genre,
yeah.
The underwear marketplace.
So tell us about the Underwear Dragon.
So this book that we're here to talk about, Return of the Underwear Dragon, is the sequel to my first book ever, Attack of the Underwear Dragon. And in the first book, I don't think you need to read the first book to understand the second whatsoever. We know what we're dealing with, underwear dragons. But in the first book, it's all about a little kid named Cole, named after my son Cole, who gave me the idea for this book. And it's all about how Cole learns how to become a knight so that he can face off. And there's this underwear dragon trying to destroy the kingdom, and Cole saves the day and becomes a knight in the process. So in the second book, Return of the Underwear Dragon, the Underwear Dragon returns because Cole figures out that Cole's looking for his own assistant knight now. And he figures out that the only reason that the Underwear Dragon keeps trying to destroy the kingdom is because he can't read the signs that say don't destroy the kingdom. So Cole sets off to try to teach him how to read. And hilarity ensues.
Well, now one thing is the dragon made out of underwear, or does he just wear underwear on his head, or?
Well, I'll show you. I know we don't have a visual, but this is what he looks like. So it's just a giant, somewhat roundish, big, large dragon wearing, like pretty classic Fruit of the Loom, old grandpa kind of underwear that we all know and love. I like the idea of him being made completely out of underwear. Maybe there's some book down the line where we can incorporate that. I like that idea.
Now, you said that your son Cole inspired you and gave you the idea. Did he actually come up with the idea of Dad, I'm thinking about this dragon that has a big belly and he's running around in his underwear?
Not at all. So he gave me this idea that he was on the bus one day and he came screaming off the bus. So Cole is 9 now. He must have been like 6 when he gave me this idea. He came home from school one day and he said, Dad, like the greatest thing happened to me on the bus. My friend Yuval said that he was going to be a knight of the round table. And he said that I could be his assistant knight. Isn't that like the best news ever? I just thought that was such a funny idea that my son, Cole, was so excited, not that he was going to be a knight, but he was going to be an assistant of any kind. I just thought there was an opportunity to kind of tell a story about a kid who learns how to dream slightly bigger than being an assistant. And then, the underwear dragon was one of those happy accidents where, or just something that happens in the writing process where I knew I had knights and I was in this medieval world and I needed an obstacle for the knight to encounter. And usually that leads you to dragons. And as you mentioned before, there's a lot of dragons swirling around out there and lots of great books about dragons. So I had to figure out a way to make mine slightly different. And that's where I landed on underwear. I literally don't know where the impulse was to, other than that those 2 words together always sounded funny to me. Mm-hmm. And then, so I had I wrote those 2 words down on a Microsoft Word blank, document. And then when I got paired up with Pete, he just like drew it, and it was this amazing, remarkable thing with a personality and character and fully fleshed out. And in no way was that how I envisioned him looking, and it was a million times better than anything I could have hoped for. So long answer, but there it is.
That's cool. Now the Pete you're referring to is best-selling illustrator Pete Oswald.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's a genius.
How is that working together?
It's been fantastic. I mean, that's been one of the best parts of this entire process, getting to know Pete and doing these 2 books together. And we've been working on some other books together. We have another book coming out, hopefully in a year or 2, and just becoming friendly with him and just seeing how he works and being amazed at how he works. And, I barely draw stick figures. So, I really require and need, someone to flesh out these silly words and silly worlds that I do like creating. And Pete is just the best. I mean, like the books we've done together, I'm really proud of, but Pete's done some books on his own and with other writers, and they're all fantastic. He's got a wordless book, like we were talking about earlier about hiking and the outdoors. Pete's got a great book named called Hike. That's a wordless picture book about hiking, and it's just gorgeous. He's incredible.
Yeah. You're talking about being able to work hand in hand with Pete. That's a very unusual arrangement. Most time we hear authors come in, and we even had a situation where an author came in and met the illustrator of her book for the first time on the podcast. And it was quite touching because it was her debut. It was her debut book. And she was brought to tears when she met this illustrator through the magic of the podcast and Zoom.
Right. I mean, I get the feeling. I mean, this is Pete illustrated my debut book. I've never done this before. And, because of these strange times we live in, I mean, I'm making it sound like Pete and I hang out all the time, and I've never met him in real life. I've met him like you and I are meeting on Zoom here a few times, and we've talked on the phone and we text and email about various things. So, yeah, but, before the first book came out, I don't think Pete and I ever spoke.
Okay.
It was only in the ramp up to promoting that book and just getting on the phone with the publisher and figuring out what we were going to do, that we started speaking, and then we kind of developed this thing independently, which has been fantastic. Yeah. But as far as like, I don't give him any advice on what to draw. I just sit back and get amazed when I get it. Every 6 months or so, I get these incredible pictures sent to me. That's
exciting. It really is a lot of fun. I have to ask, what did Cole think when he first met the Underwear Dragon and read the story that he inspired?
Cole, and maybe some parents can relate to this. My son Cole is not the most effusive little kid unless professional basketball or football is involved. He was probably 7 or 8 when it came out. I think he thought it was really cool. I think he especially thought it was cool when his friends thought it was cool that his name was in there, and I got to read it to his class, and I think he thought that was really cool. And I think he likes it more in the back of his mind than something he expresses all the time. His younger brother, Maxwell, who's now 6, loves that because I put his name in the dedication. But we're in negotiations on trying to get Maxwell as a character name for one of my future books. What? And when I say in negotiations, that's between me and my son, my 6-year-old son's lawyers. He's got a team working round the clock to make sure that, him and Cole are in fierce competition in all things at all times. So he needs to get his name into the book.
Now, before you introduced the world to the Underwear Dragon, you were writing screenplays.
Yes. Yeah, that was my main job for many years. I went to NYU dramatic writing to learn the craft, as it were. And I still do some screenwriting, but I consider myself very lucky to have found this as another kind of avenue of writing. And it came about because I keep mentioning, I have all these kids, mm-hmm. and was reading all these books to them. And I had always wanted to be a children's book writer. And as a kid, even when I was like 11 years old, I think I wrote a story called Dirk's Bump about a kid who wakes up with a bump on his head and then has to figure out where it came from. And I was like convinced that was going to be a bestseller at the time. But again, this is, mid 80s, late 80s, mid 80s. So I just always knew I wanted to do this, but yeah, the screenwriting kind of took over, and it wasn't until I had kids that I was kind of reminded of like, oh, this is an itch I never got to scratch. And it's become just so much, even though it's kind of a gross metaphor, it's become so much bigger than that, and such a like wonderful thing that I consider myself very lucky to have found at this stage in my career.
That's really cool. Yeah. I would say the kind of natural question that I was going to ask you is, what was the challenge of moving from screenwriting to picture book writing? But I thought that in a lot of ways it's similar in that you're writing a story and then handing it off to an artist to continue the creative process. That it's a real collaboration with you and Pete Oswald on the picture books, and then you and the cinematographers and the directors when you're writing a screenplay.
Totally. It's really, yeah, like on its face, it might not look, I mean, all storytelling is all storytelling. Mm-hmm. So it's all the same, and you're just trying to tell an entertaining story. It doesn't matter who your audience is or what the format is, really. It's all like beginning, middle, and end kind of stuff. And that's true no matter what you're writing. That said, I think that was part of the inkling, if I'm remembering, for me to kind of try it, was someone told me that, I think I talked to someone in the business, I can't remember why, and they said like they like working with screenwriters because they understand that part of the process, that you're kind of unlike a novelist, you control everything.
Mm-hmm.
In screenwriting, you don't really control anything, unfortunately. That's a real drawback to it. I mean, when it all works out, and I'm lucky that some of my scripts have been turned into movies, and that's just incredibly exciting. And the scale of it is just, it's really incredible, and is truly magical. But it doesn't happen that often. And it requires so much money and time and efforts of so many people, where these books are, while they require a bunch of other people, it's not as much money, and it's not like moving a mountain, which filmmaking can feel like. But screenwriters, I would imagine, make pretty good picture book writers because they're used to writing visually. And trying to create worlds with just their words that other people will go and interpret. When you write a screenplay, you just sort of hand it off and hope for the best. And that can be a really painful process, and has been a painful process to me in the past. And what's appealing is about picture books, unlike screenwriting, is you do have more of a say. I got so lucky my first time out of the gate to be working with Pete Oswald. I think I'm forever spoiled in that regard. So, but, they asked my opinion, which is way more than Hollywood really ever did or does. And you can have a say in it. And it's more of a collaboration, a real sort of collaboration. But, yes, doubling back to what you said earlier, it's very analogous, the two formats.
Yeah. That's one of the hard things, I think, for a lot of authors, especially debut authors, that for them to understand that when you're selling your story, when you're selling your book, you're selling it, and you're giving a lot of the control away of it.
Well, in screenwriting, I think legally, you literally, the studio, when they buy a script, they become legally the authors of the script, which is just kind of a weird thing. And as far as I know, the writers in picture book land retain all the rights to the words, which is beautiful and how it should be. And as I say, it is more of a collaboration, and the publishers I've been lucky enough to work with thus far have always asked for my input and sort of, I don't know, run things by me, or, just wanted me to take an early look at stuff and weigh in. But yeah, you're right. That is something I became very, that's a very natural feeling for me to hand over something and then have someone else sort of interpret it in their own way. Mm-hmm. But, the amazing thing about this is I have, I think, 6 books coming out. I'm working with, I think, 3 or 4 different illustrators. I mean, they're all just incredible at their jobs. And that's there's real magic in just seeing what they create out of your words. Mm-hmm. I rarely, I don't know about you, but I rarely read a picture book and say, oh, the artwork is terrible. And that's the artist screwed it up. That's just not a thing. Mm-hmm. They're all just incredibly talented. And we're speaking for writers. We're very lucky to be working with them.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that storytelling is storytelling, whether it's telling a story through film or a picture book or a novel. There are some people who just seem to be born storytellers, but every storyteller has to work on it. It's a craft. It's a skill that has to be developed. How can parents encourage their kids to become storytellers?
Oh, it's a great question. Well, I'm not sure if this answers it. I always say that despite all the talking I'm doing here with you, I became a writer so I didn't have to talk. This was not part of the job description when it was given to me at that career day. And that is entirely true. So I'm not sure I'm a great storyteller, sitting around a fire I've got a great one. But I do like being able to manipulate. I can spend 2 years on a story and trying to make it perfect. And I like trying do that rather than off the cuff. And we all know people like that, and they're wonderful. And it's just, unfortunately, not a skill I really have. So I would say for parents who are interested in that, I mean, kids are great natural storytellers, I think. Sometimes they get the beginning, middle, and end part a little confused or jumbled. Sometimes they start a story that never finishes, an open-ended story. Some of them have real shocking endings, abrupt, shocking ending, twist endings, with people's heads popping off. But, you know, I think the simplest advice I can give is just to make them readers, you know, to just get those rhythm of stories, you know, implanted in their brain. That sounds so technical and terrible, but like, you know, just getting the rhythm of listening to great storytellers, you know, the classic stories in their heads. And you just sort of like, without even knowing it, you're sort of learning how to tell a story, you know, in the most passive but enjoyable kind of way. And then, you know, I get my kids, they don't do it as much anymore, but we try to write stories also. And I just do concentrate again on this, like, let's make sure it has a beginning, middle, and an end. And if we do that, then we've got something.
Yeah. You know, as you're talking about encouraging your kids to read and in order to develop that storytelling muscle, it seemed perfectly natural to me, because when we're encouraging our kids to become football players, they get out there and they do it, and they watch they'll watch the Patriots or the Jets or whoever on TV, and the same with baseball, or if someone's a dancer, they'll go to class, but then they'll also watch the pros do it. And so sitting down with your kids, reading the stories, allowing them to experience words that the masters have created is a great way for them to kind of start working that muscle.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was a big reader as a kid, and picture books are just, you know, they take 5 minutes to read, and you're making such a huge investment in their imagination and development. They're just really the most simple and effective tool to be doing that. But you know, hopefully that is the theme of the sequel, is teaching the Underwear Dragon how to read. And once you know, it's like a kid getting a car. Like when you're a teenager, like the world just opens up in a way that you didn't know it could be this great. And I think reading really unlocks that also for kids of a certain age.
Yeah. You know, one of the things you were talking about, Pete, and his picture book without words, it was wordless picture book. One of the things that we encourage families to do is to, before you read a book, is sometimes to just take a picture walk through the book, cover up the words with a sticky note or whatever, and just look at the pictures and talk with your kids about, what do you think this story might be about? And I'm thinking that Return of the Underwear Dragon would be a really fun book to do that with.
I love that. I've never heard that before, and I really, you know, as soon as we hang up, I'm going to try that. It's, you know, in movies, that's something you often hear when you're learning how to write them, that an effective movie or an effective scene in a movie, you can turn the volume off, and just by watching the actors' sort of expressions, you can kind of get enough context clues, if it's done well, that you don't need any of the dialogue. You don't need any of the sound. You understand perfectly what's going on. But I've never heard of that done in picture books. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm going to try it. And if you do it, let me know how it turns out.
Wow. Yeah. It is. It's a fun technique. And actually the way I learned about that is I was talking to my beautiful wife and her friend who are educators, and they work with families in the inner city in Boston. And I was asking them, how can we encourage families to, especially city families, to read more together? And they explained that, well, a lot of parents can't read, or they can't read in English.
Yeah.
But you know, they said that was one of the ways that those parents who are struggling to read can still help their kids develop a love of reading. And of course, it's also a great way for every family just to, enjoy that. Parents are always complaining about, my kid wants me to read this book 5,000 times.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to read it the same way every time. You can experience books in different ways.
I mean, I love that. It's also, the kid can read it. If there are no words, I'm making quote signs here, but the kid can then read it to their parents, and make up the story as they go. I'm curious if illustrators, as part of their process, kind of do that, like throw the words away and then just look at the pictures and like, am I telling this story visually in a way that makes sense without any of the words? And the words can be, maybe a cherry on top or decoration, but, are we telling this story visually? I imagine they do some part of that in their process.
Yeah, I'll have to ask the next time we have an illustrator on. Scott, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to learn more about you and learn more about the return of the Underwear Dragon.
Well, you could go to my website, scottrothmanwriter.com. I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and you would think I would know what my handle is for either of those things, but I do not. I'm sure if you Google Scott Rothman or go to my website, there's links to those things. Or come to Mystic and just shout my name really loud, and maybe I'll hear you and I'll come.
We've had a really fun time speaking to the author of The Return of the Underwear Dragon, Scott Rothman. Hey, Scott, this is a lot of fun. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. This is great.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Caitlin Wallinger. She'll be here to celebrate Mother Mule. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, you may be frustrated at how very difficult it is to let the world know about your book. It really is a struggle. I mean, there are literally thousands of books published every single month. That's a lot of competition out there, especially if you're trying to do it all by yourself. But you don't have to do it by yourself. We would love to help you celebrate your book and tell the world all about it. So many ways that we can help you. You can be a guest on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. It's fun. It's easy. It doesn't cost a thing. You can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel, and if they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Certified Great Read. You can also take advantage of our monthly promotion program, where your book will be celebrated via commercials on the podcast with blasts to our 55,000 plus social media followers, and your book will be displayed on our nationwide network of pedestrian billboards. You can learn all about these services by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, clicking on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page, scrolling on down to our various services. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Scott Rothman. Be sure to check out The Return of the Underwear Dragon. Also want to thank our sponsor, Janet Hoffman, and her book, The Clothesline Code. Be sure to visit her website, janethoffmanauthor.com. I also want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan, Michael Murphy, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.